This is not adoption by compliance.
We are not policymakers.
We all believe in one common goal.
So we disagree, but we don't fight.
So anybody can observe.
And that's the collective that comes into it.
That's not easy. It's a super interesting experience.
Capital markets have a simple but essential function. They take the excess of resources wherever they are in the world, and they inject them where there is a need and ask for those resources.
Investors make investment decisions based on data. And they have data on balance sheet, on their financial performances, on profit and loss. But over the past 20 years, investors started to care about sustainability factors. But there is no unified single disclosure standard in the world.
Why is that a problem? Because I personally experienced it as pretty frustrating. If you are at a company and you want to do the best disclosure, there is not necessarily the best because there is not the one standard.
There are lots of different frameworks and standards on sustainability out there. And it's called the alphabet soup of these frameworks and standards because it's lots of acronyms. You can think of GRI, of CDP, of TNFD, now there's TISFD, there was SASB, there was CDSB, there was IR, and a lot of stakeholders were getting lost in all of these. How do you make them all fit together into one, and how do they all relate to one another?
So it became really clear that at some point someone really needed to articulate a vision for a complete and comprehensive system.
But with the IFRS Foundation, it probably started back in about 2019 when real momentum started to take place around this. There were a variety of figures around the organization that were starting to look for one home for international sustainability reporting with an investor focus particularly.
From this initial set of informal discussion, we sort of started the process of formal evaluation and assessment of the opportunity for the foundation to play such a role.
So back in February 2020, just before COVID, the trustees decided to consult on whether or not the foundation should set up a sustainability board as a sister board for the Accounting Standards Board.
The consultation took place and really the feedback we received was very supportive of the initiative. So the support of the stakeholder was really critical in coming up to such a decision.
And that led to the announcement at COP in 2021 for the announcement of the creation of a sister board within the IFRS Foundation.
We are announcing the formation of the International Sustainability Standards Board, or ISSB. Its purpose is to develop, in the public interest, a comprehensive global baseline of sustainability disclosures for the financial markets.
The ISSB was created under the responsibility of the IFRS Foundation because of the reputation of the IFRS Foundation.
We were known around the globe. Our standards had been applied and implemented in more than 100 countries, 140 countries, so it was like a safe option. If you want to go global, it must be IFRS. That was the reply.
But the ISSB was a new initiative. It was an entrepreneurial endeavor. We were standing up a new business line, in a sense, creating sustainability disclosures within this long-standing organization.
We started with recruiting the chair, which was with Emmanuel Faber, for us a very important step.
That was the first time in my life that I really started building a team from scratch. And it's really interesting because you don't think so much about the person in isolation, but really as a function of whoever you already have had and what kind of diversity that you want to add to the team at the end. And so it's really been a super interesting experience.
We have people from companies, with an investor's background, with an academic background, professors, we have standard setters, we have many, many different professional experiences. And what makes us special is that we all believe in one common goal.
So what's really important in board meetings is that we come into the room with our views and thoughts, having read the papers and thought about it as individuals. But I think we're all willing to listen and perhaps adjust our position based on what we hear at the board table. And that's the collective that comes into it.
There can be a whole range of perspectives, and it's not that one person is right and one person is wrong, but what I view among the board and staff is people really listening to each other and have an open and honest debate to try to get to the best decision possible.
That debate itself actually enriches the decision-making process, and obviously that decision-making process then results in a vote.
So one of the best collective decisions I think we made was in October 22, and we were voting on whether we should require the disclosure of Scope 3, but they were really empathetic to how difficult it was for people to make that calculation. And we came up with a series of ideas in the board meeting for what we could do to help companies to do the disclosure.
At the end of the day, our goal is not just to take our work forward, but actually have our work be accepted by our key stakeholders. And if they're going to have different views, we need that to be reflected in our decisions. They need to have heard that those views are understood and ultimately accept the extent to which they're reflected in what we did.
All of our board meetings are held in public. And so, it's constantly being aware of the fact that you are serving public interest and you are trying as accurately as possible to not just represent, but also put yourself out there so that you can receive the feedback openly from the public.
As you know, everything we do is based on market feedback, and every decision we take is based on the feedback that we get from investors, from preparers, from regulators, to make sure that all the decisions we're making are accounting for this feedback we receive. It's essential to our process and something that we'll never stop cultivating, never stop paying attention to.
The global listed valuation of securities, whether that's equity or whether that's debt, is about $500 trillion. Just imagine that by using this additional language on the source code of economics that we do with accounting, the markets derive an allocation to the companies that are better prepared than others for that transition. Just 1% of that is $5 trillion a year. The ISSB work can illuminate those for the capital markets being fully participating in the transition.
We often think about the largest publicly traded brand names, and these companies have teams and resources all focused on their public reporting efforts. Most companies don't have those resources, and private markets are an example. So the fact that we were thinking about proportionality for companies that are starting out with the standards, and the fact that we are taking an industry-specific approach and entity-specific approach is really critical to meeting companies where they are.
Sometimes people just focus on standard, but what I'm trying to emphasize is the value of all this education material, whether they are in written form or in webinar. And these education material production is really valuable to the market.
We can't just pay attention to those who want to talk to us. We have to think about that balance and reaching out to who's not coming to us, and we need to make sure to go to them in order to make sure their voices are heard.
We need trust from jurisdictions, securities regulators. We need the shared responsibility or common responsibility jointly assumed by them and by us.
And I knew the relevance that the IOSCO endorsement could have for different regulators. The fact that a global organization determines that our standards, that's really powerful message. And again, that's something where we're leveraging when we are talking to regulators. Try to be effective. Our standards have been deemed to meet the quality standards that are needed for use in capital markets.
When we voted to publish S1 and S2, that was such a moment for the board because we'd been right from inception working really hard to try to meet the timeline of getting these first standards out in the first half of 2023.
We crossed it this morning with the launch of S1 and S2. Our general requirement and our first climate standards.
We had done extensive consultations, so we knew that there was a high demand for the work that we were doing. So when the BOE standards were released, I think there was a lot of excitement in the market.
We have the privilege, really, of having inherited such a rich body of knowledge that we build on. So really, one of the things that the ISSB does is it stands on the shoulders of giants.
The TCFD was really the last significant investor-oriented part of the alphabet soup, and so being able to bring that together was another key signal, I think, to the market that this is where it's going to happen.
Now, in preparation for the next phase, we have chosen from inception, at the start of ISSB, to create a second vice chair position in charge of capacity building, global south, and inclusiveness.
You know, when we look back to the history of standard making, right, it is true that standards are initiated by the global north or in developed countries because the companies are ready, they have been practicing. That is not true in developing countries, especially very vulnerable countries where capital market is nascent. But those companies are desperate to reach global capital market, right? So the challenge for me at that time, for the board, is how can our ISSB standard provide equal opportunity to global south companies, right?
So the team is spread out all over the world, and while that brings its challenges, it also creates a lot of opportunities for us to be agile and to respond to market needs.
We should not forget that we don't mandate the standards. The jurisdictions are the ones who decide about this, so it's important that we give them enough material to take good decisions.
I don't think we can write truly global standards unless we all become truly global in our own perspectives.
At COP27, my fellow board member Ndidi and I met with the finance minister of Nigeria, right, Ms. Zainab Ahmad. When we explained the potential benefit of ISSB standards, she immediately saw the potential to unlock investment opportunities so that Nigerian companies can benefit.
So it's really moving very, very quickly. And I think what is most important is that this is not adoption by compliance. This is really adoption because these are countries that have decided that they can weigh in on the shaping of these standards so that the standards actually speak their language for them.
So in June 2025, the UK government announced its process of consulting on our standards. And there's something, I think, quite sort of deep about your own country that you know incredibly well going through this process of putting standards that you've created into effect.
And I also think, going beyond the pure technical work, that the IFRS Foundation and the ISSB is a really good example of how international cooperation can still work in a disconnected world. So I think it's a great mission to show what's still possible with collective ambition globally when people really work together to get things done.
We are not working alone. We are not fighting against somebody working alone. We are working as a part of a very huge ecosystem.
We are not policymakers, but we make it possible for companies and investors to make informed choices in the future. And this challenge will not disappear. And it shouldn't be dependent on political cycles. It is a long-term commitment. If you want to have both policymakers and investors, political bodies and markets work in the same direction, you need both sides.
So therefore, in 10, 15, 30 years, I hope that the young generation right now would appreciate ISSB, that saying that, wow, ISSB made a good job for us. Yes.
I love my job.
I love that you love your job.